Welcome back to another episode of The Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopst, and today's guest is Shawn Johnson. Shawn is an Olympic gold medalist. She's a Dancing with the Stars champion and a New York Times best-selling author. But she is much more than that. She's also a mom, she's also a wife, and an excellent role model. What inspires me most about Shawn is her continued pursuit to become her best, her commitment to her family, and her gift of vulnerability to help others. So let's get this conversation going and welcome Shawn Johnson to the Adversity Advantage podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Shawn, I'm super excited to chat with you. I've been wanting to have you on here for quite some time. Your story really inspires me, and you should be so proud of yourself for everything that you've accomplished.
Thank you. Thank you. It's truly my honor.
So I guess where I want to start is, it's somewhat into 2022 already, and I heard you on a podcast saying that, you and your husband, you set goals every year at the beginning of the year to determine what you want to achieve. And one of the big things you wanted to achieve is to make 2022 the year that you work on yourself. So what does that look like for you? And what's an area or two of your life that you're hoping to sincerely improve by the end of the year?
Oh my gosh, a ton of different places. So the past, I would say 3 years, like a solid 3 years, I've been pregnant or I've had a newborn. So that takes a lot of, I don't want to say sacrifice, but sacrifice as a mom, because you've got an infant running around and you really have no time for yourself. And as far as pregnancy and hormones and your body's concerned, really all you're trying to do is just regulate yourself again and make sure you're not a crazy woman who's sleep deprived. And this year, I think there's just been so many things that I've had to have a different perspective on when it comes to my body, that I would love this year to be able to find time to work out, to get my body strong again. I always talk about when it comes to postpartum and getting quote unquote my body back, I don't care what it looks like. I'm not the kind of person that's trying to get back to a number on a scale, but I do enjoy and appreciate strength and muscle and the health side of that. And I can just tell my body isn't strong anymore. So I would love to be able to work on that. I also have nagging injuries from gymnastics that I would really love to address this year and get fixed and just kind of, put my body first, which I've done a good job for my kids, but now it's for me.
Yeah, I think, working out and taking care of your body is so important. And I think specifically, as we continue to get older and, you're now a parent, you have 2 kids and you're running around doing all these things, I think it makes it even more important to make sure that you're taking care of your body and getting stronger so that you'd end up not hurting yourself, because of some injury that you didn't expect because of, not exercising the right way. I want to talk to you though about pressure, because I know one of the things that you've struggled with it in the past, you've opened up and shared, specifically when you were competing in the Olympics, was pressure. And that really caused a lot of mental health struggles for you. It caused a lot of stress. And now I can imagine as a parent, there's a lot of pressure on you with social media and comparing yourself to other moms potentially and that sort of thing. So how do you deal with the pressure that goes along with being a parent today?
It's difficult. I would say I went through 10 years of therapy after gymnastics, or starting after 2008. And I worked on myself very, very hard with professionals because I had a hard time balancing pressure, like you said. I feel like I did a really good job for my sport, but I took things too far and too extreme, and I didn't know how to transition that into a normal lifestyle. So those extreme tendencies kind of followed me throughout my life. And so I worked with professionals really hard in managing. I had eating disorders. I was a perfectionist. I binged and purged. I had all of these mindsets that if I didn't excel at everything, then I was a failure. And I had all of these things that I really had to work on. And when it came to healing, about 10 years into therapy, when I started having the ability to kind of take care of myself in a way, I met my husband, and he's just the greatest man in the entire world and supports me and understands everything that I've gone through. So I would say in dealing with pressure with my kids and parenting and social media and negativity and mom guilt and all of those things, the expectations I put on myself, my husband is really, really good at helping me kind of manage that stress and offload it when I need to. And he's also really good at pointing it out in like a gentle way of like, I think you need to take a step back because I think it's getting to be a little too much. So,
Right, right. Yeah, you touched on something that I think is really important for people to hear, and I talk about this a lot on the show, is like the importance of like who you're spending time with, and making sure that your inner circle, the people that are closest to you, are lifting you up and not tearing you down, but also like being there to kind of check you when maybe you're being out of line or you're being too hard on yourself or you're not giving yourself enough grace or enough credit. And it, from what I see, it just seems like your husband is like the perfect fit for that for you, and is able to help you mitigate this pressure in a much more healthy way than like back when you were competing in the Olympics. But I guess like what I want to go into now is, I know you tell this story about how after you competed in 2008, you kind of come back and you're looking to compete again in 2012, and you're on the balance beam and you get this message from God that this is just time to stop, right? And while there's people that are listening to this that maybe have never been in that moment, nor will they ever be in a moment where they're competing at that level, there's a lot of people that get into these times of their life where they're forced to reinvent themselves and they feel hopeless. They feel in the depths of despair and they don't ever think they're going to become anything other than what they are in that moment. So if you could walk the audience a bit, I guess, as much in detail as you'd like, of like what was going through your mind at that time and then how you began to make those shifts to reinvent yourself into who you are today.
I usually spend about an hour on this topic. So let me try to summarize it. So I went back to gymnastics in 2010 after I took a 2-year hiatus. And in those 2 years, I was trying to reinvent myself because I didn't know how to be anything other than a gymnast. And in those 2 years, I struggled with depression and I struggled with identity just because I was unable to find anything to kind of fill that void. And so what I did naturally is I went back to gymnastics because that's the last time I remembered being quote unquote happy. And so when I went back, I actually did pretty well. I got back into the USA National Championships. I went back to World Championships. I was doing really well. But I had this community, kind of like you were speaking to earlier. I had this team around me who was one of the best teams out there, agent-wise, manager-wise, sponsorships. It was Fortune 500 companies. I was really set from an outsider's perspective. If you looked at it, it was kind of like, this is great. And I had all of these people telling me that I was on the right path. Like, this is what I should be doing. I'm doing a good job. It makes sense. I will make the team. I will get these contracts. I will set myself up for life, all these things. And I struggled. I struggled through the whole thing. I got all the way up until a week before Olympic trials. And it was kind of this 6-month lead up to Olympic trials where I was so depressed. And I didn't know why. Every single time I went into practice, I was just like, I don't want to be here. My body hurts. My mind hurts. Things feel harder than usual. And I don't know how to explain that, but back in 2008, I had gone through far worse injuries, far harder training, and it was easier back then, or it mentally felt easy. Whereas this time, the smallest things felt like my world was ending. And all I could think about every single day I went into practice is I felt like I was working against something. I was like working against myself, and it just felt so hard and so heavy. Try to summarize all of that though. I went into practice one day and I remember my coach kind of telling me what I had to do and what my assignments were. And it was a week before Olympic trials. I was pretty much already guaranteed a spot on the team if I just competed well. And I remember hearing those assignments and it just felt like my coach was delivering, I don't know, the world's hardest thing. And I remember starting to kind of go through the motions and I just felt like a voice spoke to me and was like, this isn't for you. Like, you're good. You're fine. You are fine to walk out and start over. And I just felt like the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. I remember I got down and I looked at my coach and I was like, yeah, no, thank you. And I walked out and never looked back. But the hardest thing I think that a lot of people deal with is you so easily get stuck in this path where the world and society is telling you it's a good one. Like whether you're trying to get promoted or make a job or whatever, the world can very easily say, just keep pushing. And if you just keep pushing, you'll get there. And I think at the end of the day, if it's not what you want, there's no amount of encouragement, support, or team that can kind of get you there. And it took me kind of learning the hard way that starting over seemed more exciting than going to the Olympics, which I think is a huge red flag that I'm doing something wrong.
Right. So the one thing I wanted to follow up on with you on that, and thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing that, is that when you were hearing that voice and you were like, no, you're good, you got this. Do you think that voice was telling you to move on because you were made for more and you were meant to go on a different path? Or do you think it just was telling you this because like this thing had really started to like take a negative toll on your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health?
I think all of it. I think however you look at it and what your beliefs are, it can be, looked at in any different way. For me, I saw it as like my faith. I saw it as God talking to me and being like, this is your sign. In my opinion, I had tried to be that tough person and that tough competitor for 6 months, for a long time, where it was just like, oh, just get through the hard day. You don't quit on a hard day. But there was so much that was deteriorating as far as like my mental health, my body. My relationship with my parents, my relationship with my friends, my relationship with my team, my manager, my everybody. It was falling apart. And I think when I kept looking at the bigger picture, nothing seemed right. Everything seemed off. And I think every single day I just kept asking myself, is it the phase? Is it just a road bump? Or am I truly going after something that I'm not meant to do? And I think that day it was just kind of like, what would happen if I just gave this all up? And there was a lot of people who are very, very much so against that choice. Very against that choice. My agent thought I was absolutely certifiably insane. But there was no way I could articulate to people that it felt like just the perfect decision. It made me so happy to be done. And it just told me it was the right one.
Yeah. And kudos to you for making that choice, because I can't imagine how hard that was to walk away from something that you had a lot of success in. I mean, you won a gold medal. It's not like you were somebody who was on the come up and just trying to make it in or trying to get the bronze or trying to get the silver. Like, you were considered to be the best of the best. So kudos to you for kind of stepping in to this new version of you. I want to stay on the topic of faith, because this is something that, we've talked about on the show, and a lot of people struggle with the idea of faith. And I think more so when things are really bad, they kind of forget God, they forget their faith, and they're like, oh my gosh, like the world is ending. Like, why is this happening to me? God must not be real. And I fell victim to that when I was younger. And you've had a lot of adversity in your life post-Olympic, between struggles with pregnancy, between, stuff you've opened up with on social media and in your podcast. So it's not like you've been immune to it since you decided to shift out of Olympics. So what have been some of your best practices that when fear really starts to creep in and the odds are stacked against you, that you're able to kind of sift through that and maintain your faith?
I think it's difficult. I think there's a lot of circumstances out there that people go through where you can very easily be like, faith can't be real, because why would I ever be put through this? And I think for me, I've been fortunate in the sense that I haven't been tested too hard, I guess. Maybe it's just outlook. But for me, faith gives me hope. Hope that I can get through it. Hope that I'm going to be guided through it. Hope that there is something redeeming. And I think in every situation I've been in where I've been tested, as far as like struggling through a miscarriage or health or family issues or whatever it might be, I just keep coming back to, you know what, I'm being tested and I know I'm strong enough to get through this. And if I can keep my head up and keep looking forward, then my faith will guide me through. I don't know. I think it's kind of that invisible cloud above you, where you can either choose two paths. You can try to find the good in everything and know that it's there and constantly keep fighting for it. Or You can so easily fall victim to the negative of why me, why this. And I think that just kind of perpetuates itself. So, as hard as the positivity is, it's the only thing I can grasp to kind of get through.
Right. And it doesn't change the fact that what you're going through isn't good. It's not like it's Pollyanna. You're just addressing that, what's happening to you is very unfortunate, but you also look at it in the sense that God and your faith has gotten you through every other negative situation in your life, and you feel confident that it will get you through this one too, because otherwise, like you said, you fall victim to, why is this happening to me? Like, my life is now going to be miserable forever. And then what do? Then you make decisions based on that, and you go and you self-medicate, you ruin relationships, you self-sabotage because you're assuming that your life is going to be messed up forever. But if you're able to maintain that sense of faith, even if it's just a little bit, and just lean into that the best you can, it at least gives you a chance to get through it, because when you're more optimistic, you're more confident, you have a more of a positive outlook, it's going to inspire you to keep moving forward. I want to go into your relationship with external validation, because I know like that was something that really brought you down, like during your gymnastics career and in the Olympics. And now, like, in the Olympics, you're in front of tens of thousands of people. Now you have an audience of millions. So how do you navigate the relationship with external validation now with the work that you're doing?
I should probably still work on it. I can tell you that. I spent my entire professional sports career putting every inch and ounce of value that I had in myself on external validation. That's how gymnastics works. You put on a performance that is objectively judged or subjectively judged by people's opinions of you. And they're the ones who determine if you get a gold medal or you come in last place. And that's based off of my entire life's work. And transitioning from that into like everyday life and not caring what people think of me was impossible, because I was trained to care, and I was trained to depend on what your opinion says of me, of how I look, of how I act, of what my performance is. And how do I manage that now? I think, very long story, try to summarize real quick. I learned a very hard lesson and a very great lesson at the Olympics. I was an all-around gymnast. My event was called the all-around. And my number one competitor was my best friend, Nastya Lukin. And I remember I was kind of favored to win that competition that day. I went out and put every ounce of soul that I had on the floor, and I came in second. And I remember people asking me, like media afterwards, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? How did it feel to lose? All of this. And I remember saying to all of them, I was like, I don't think I could have given anymore. Like, I truly left everything out there. And I went through this whole like, why me situation, I guess. And then fast forward the next day, I did the beam final, and I went up and I did not give my best performance at all. Like, I can tell you what went wrong. I can tell you it was not my best. I can tell you I trained better. I was off that day, and I got the gold medal. And I remember all the media and all of the judges saying, you deserved that. And I kind of just laughed. And I was like, actually, I didn't. Like, you told me yesterday that I wasn't good enough, when in actuality, it was my best performance. And today, now you're telling me I am good enough and I deserved it. But I'm the one telling you it wasn't my best. And I was very grateful to learn that lesson the hard way of, now in everyday life, people's judgment is wrong. And at the end of the day, you are your best judge. And if you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I gave it my all, you got to be okay with that. And that's got to be enough.
Absolutely. I think our society, we have this weird relationship with failure, right? You think every time somebody drops a pass in the game, they boo. Every time somebody strikes out, they boo, instead of looking at it like, I mean, yeah, of course you want your team to win. I think, as humans, that's just human nature. But at the same time, it's created this super negative relationship that people have with failure, where now there's a lot of people that are afraid to try, not because of like how they're going to feel about themselves, but like the stuff they're going to catch from other people when they fail. And instead, like, if we can just look at every time we try something, that we had the faith and belief in ourselves to take that chance, because we believed in enough in our ability to complete whatever task, to complete whatever event, whatever that we were trying to, I think more people would take that chance. And like you mentioned how you gave it your best performance and you were told that it wasn't good enough, then you win the gold and it didn't even feel like real to you. And it created like this disconnect between an actual achievement and how you felt. Has there been anything like in recent times where you've achieved something that you thought was going to be awesome and then inside it just didn't feel connected?
I don't know. I honestly think after the Olympics, every single thing I go through in life is kind of like that. So I don't know if there's just one thing, but I feel like there's been multiple times within my marriage and parenting and our business where, people will give us praise and I'll be like, that's funny. I don't think we deserve praise for that. But then there's times where like I feel so proud of something and nobody will recognize it, which is fine too. So I think it's just self-reflection of purpose. I don't know, something bigger where the world will praise you for things and they will laugh at you and mock at you for things and boo you and do all those things. But you still need to celebrate your own pride and success on your own, because if you depend on the world to do that, you will be greatly disappointed.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, I could definitely see from your background and the competitiveness that comes along with competing in the Olympics like you did, how that can almost be a pattern that whenever you achieve something and somebody gives you validation, you're like, was it really that great? But I think from what I've seen, your relationship with that has become a lot healthier through the years based on like how you're responding to the external validation. You're not letting it like get to your head like nearly as much as maybe you once did. So I know recently you've got some troubles going on with your knee and you're not able to work out in the way that you have been. And I've seen you adjust your workouts with the rower and other things. And like we just said, you are a competitor. So you're so used to competing and being the best and doing your best. So how do you navigate like running your own race now? Like with like seeing maybe what other people are doing with their workouts, or maybe seeing what Andrew's doing and or knowing what you used to be able to do. Like how do you manage that headspace to kind of keep you focused on your own race?
I think I've just completely changed my expectations of myself. I think up until I had kids, I still had a very unhealthy relationship with working out where I expected myself to still be the Olympian. I expected to go into every workout and win, and I expected to still be as strong and do all these things. After having kids, my expectation of myself is just to be healthy. Because of the miscarriage, because of 4 knee surgeries, because of a fractured back over the years, all of these things that I've gone through, my like appreciation for general health has just skyrocketed. So I more so look at like my race as just a challenge to get better. And I know what phases I'm in life and what I'm not. I remember it was just the other day, one of my good friends is running a marathon this year and she begged me to do it with her. And it's on my bucket list to do it. And impulsively, I was like, yes, sign me up. I'll do it with you. We're going to run it in November, all of these things. And then later on, I had like a conversation with myself and I was like, I think my goal this year should just be to work out, just to find time to work out, not to find time to run a marathon. And I've done so much over the years where I've learned, very lucky to have learned balance. And my mission on a daily basis is to maintain that kind of equilibrium and not go too extreme anymore. So
I think balance is everything. And I think just being able to stay focused on yourself, because let's face it, I think most people spend like 80 to 90% of their time focusing on what other people are doing and not focusing on what like they should be doing or their goals or where their health's at or what they should be doing to better themselves. And as a result, it pulls them the furthest away from the very thing that they want. And that is to be healthy, to be happy, to be self-confident, all those things. And I think at the end of the day, like you said, like you have to do what's best for your health. And honestly, like where we're at as a country and like how so many people are unhealthy right now. What I try to tell people as a trainer, like just move your body. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what the
Yeah.
next best workout program is. Doesn't matter if you go to the gym and work out for 2 hours or whatever. Just move every single day, and it's going to be better than what most people are doing. I want to talk about like your vulnerability. That's something that really inspires me, and how open you and your husband are, and you just share your life in a way that's not just you like kind of venting. You're just not just venting, you're like sharing lessons and opening up and trying to relate to your audience. And I got to imagine that can be tough at times. So what's been something that you guys have shared that you were really like, afraid to talk about, but really hit home with your audience where you got a lot of good positive feedback from it?
I would say our miscarriage. For us, up until that moment, we had never shared anything vulnerable on social media. And I think that's because of our sports background. Sports entertainment is the opposite of sharing vulnerability. They want to create these fluff pieces that you watch on NBC where it's just like Rocky. It's like, oh, he went through a broken leg, but he's just superhuman and a machine. And I think the world has this image. We thought this world had this image of us where we could only show how strong we are, and we were afraid to show weakness. And I remember when we got pregnant and we lost that pregnancy, we had kind of documented the whole thing for ourselves. We had created this beautiful video. I sat there and watched it for hours and just bawled my eyes out. But it was a home video we created for ourselves. And I remember telling Andrew that I felt really called to post it. And I don't know why, because I was very anti-vulnerability back then. I didn't want to show anybody an unfiltered picture, let alone something like that. And Andrew was the first person to be like, no, I think we should take a second on this and breathe and kind of heal before the world has their judgment of it. And I just kept saying, no, I don't know why, but I feel like I need to post it. I don't know if anybody's going to watch it, but I need to. Anyways, we got to a point where we're like, okay, we'll post it. And that was the first moment that we actually saw the internet not be one-sided, not just be a place where we post something, but we saw it as a community of friends and family. And I remember sitting in front of the computer for hours and just reading story after story after story of people and what they'd gone through and how they had healed. When I had miscarried, I felt so isolated and alone. And in that moment, I felt like I had a community that was like hugging me. And it was because of that video. It was because of the comment section, believe it or not, that I was able to heal from that. And I think that's the first time, too, we noticed that there's this desperate need. And I learned it firsthand for a community that's real and not just filtered and fake. So
Thank you so much again for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, I watched the compilation video that y'all created, and I was like in tears, just really moved by it, because I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine like what y'all went through just from being so excited and the whole story behind finding out you were pregnant and then having him. I think he didn't find out for a week or something, and then
yeah.
you find out that you miscarried, and then all the shame that you said that came along with that. And it's so amazing that it resonated. And you're right. Like, I think vulnerability, they say, is like the bridge to connection. I don't know who says that, but you share and then you're able to get people to comment and say, oh, like, I've been there too. I get it. Like, I understand. Or, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much for sharing. Now I feel comfortable to share. And then now it's like this domino effect of you sharing, and now other people are sharing, and you're continuing to help other people along that journey. Like, along that topic of going through something as hard as you did through the miscarriage, there's people that maybe they don't have as supportive of a husband as Andrew, that they're going through something challenging like that. And because of the situation, they end up, turning to alcohol. They end up turning to drugs. They end up getting back into a toxic relationship or spending too much money or whatever. Like, what have been some of your best practices other than having the support of Andrew, that when you're in a rut, you're really having a hard time with your mental health? Like, what are some of the things that you do?
By the way, I wasn't laughing at that, whatever, but I was giggling because I've been there in every single one of those situations. I was in a toxic relationship for 4 years where I kept going back, and I don't know why. I still would have married the guy had he asked. I have abused substances. I have, I've checked it all off the bucket list. It's not a bucket list. Don't make it one. But I laugh or I giggle because it's such a serious topic that people brush off. And I remember talking to my husband early on when we were dating about all these things I had been through. And I remember him asking, well, why didn't you just stop? Or why didn't you just choose to eat food? Or why didn't you just leave? Or whatever. And it seems so simple, but we all know if you're in that situation, you don't know how to get out. You truly don't. You don't know how to not continue to drink. You don't know how to not continue to take whatever it is you're taking. I mean, it just seems like you are out of your body and out of your mind. And all I can say is how I got out of all of those situations, and it took time, is we all have that voice inside of us that knows something's wrong. You do. And it's there, and you try to push it away. And I would just cling to it and be like, I know this isn't right. In every instance, I just had to ask for help, whether it was for a friend. You don't even have to go seek help at first, but tell somebody and then have that somebody help you find somebody else and slowly build this community that's helping you be the best person you are. You said it earlier in the podcast. My husband's a firm believer in it. You become who you're around, whether you like it or not. And if you have something or someone that is toxic in your circle, that will rub off on you. And you have to be very, very cautious of who you hang out with and what you do and why, because we all fall in line to it. And sometimes you just have to close people out.
For sure. I remember one of the things that I didn't believe when my parents told me it when I was a kid was you're judged by the company you keep. And I was like, nah, I'm my own person. Like I can do my own thing. And then I slowly realized over time, like they were right. Not so much in the sense of like people were judging me for who I'm hanging out with, so to speak. It was more I was becoming that group of people. I tell this often. I think your environment creates a false sense of normalcy. And if you're spending time with people that are super negative and doing drugs all the time and talking down to others, and I can go on and on with these examples, you're going to think that's normal because that's all you're around. Whereas if you put yourself in a new environment where people are working on themselves, are more health conscious and that sort of thing, it's going to feel a little awkward at first because it's completely different from what you're used to, but that will become your new normal if you spend enough like time in that. So you've talked about like your struggles with addiction and body image and pressure and everything came from the Olympics and, you know, a little in your time after. Have you been able to like go back and pinpoint where a lot of this came from, or did it just start like when you were competing as a kid?
I would say it came from gymnastics. I was very, very, very lucky to have parents who were so supportive and so helpful and just as healthy of parents as you could possibly have in life. And I think they're the ones who really helped me get through a lot of it. But I think it was gymnastics, and I think it's perfectionism. I think I learned at a very early age that the only thing you strive for is perfection, which is inevitably what you learn in gymnastics because you're shooting for a perfect score. And I think I just struggled a lot with that perfectionism addiction, pretty much, in every aspect of life. I wanted to be the perfect body. I wanted to wear the perfect clothes. I wanted to have the perfect boyfriend. I wanted to have the perfect job. And whenever I couldn't achieve that, I would try to find ways to cut corners and to, you know, do things the wrong way. And then I would just, spiral. And I would say perfectionism. So I think talking about like the race that I run within my health, lifestyle, and exercise these days, I think a lot of that is I'm so afraid of perfection these days, or perfectionism, that I almost run away from it. I just want to be normal. I just want to be down the middle.
So do you ever find it like challenging that you maybe are too hard on yourself for wanting to be better at something because of your relationship with perfectionism in the past?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's kind of like the angel and devil conversation I have all the time. I have such negative memories of those dark times that I went through with addiction and depression and everything, that whenever I start feeling that itch to just be perfect or to post another edited picture or to lose more weight or whatever it might be, that's when I always talk to my husband and I'm like, I got to take a step back. I got to go eat a donut, or I got to sit this workout out, or whatever it might be. I just have to be celebrated for being normal instead of trying to race to win.
So I know with your background and everything that you've achieved today, like your mental fitness has been something that I'm sure has been a huge asset to you to get through a lot of this stuff. And you brought up, wanting to be normal and saying, if you want to go eat a donut, like that's okay. And there's a lot of people that when they go and eat a donut, they might be hard on themselves for the next 2 weeks because they ate that donut. So is there anything you tell yourself after you do that to kind of keep you like moving towards that next step and not like back in that same old rut?
Everything in moderation. I mean, I try to let myself be human. I enjoy eating pizza and having milkshakes and going to McDonald's to get pancakes every once in a while. I mean, I think the thing that I just constantly tell myself is, and I learned this from my nutritionist for 10 years, is there's nothing wrong with eating chocolate cake, and there's nothing wrong with splurging and having those things, and you should never beat yourself up for it. But everything in moderation. For every donut you eat, go eat some vegetables and celebrate that too, because you can't survive on donuts and you can't survive just on broccoli. So
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's so many different levels of health and fitness. And I know from my own experience, after I got out of jail, I was so focused on just being physically fit that if I felt that if I deviated from my diet at all, if I didn't stick with the chicken and broccoli and the fish and the egg whites, that I was going to go back to the previous version of me before I was incarcerated. And that ended up bringing me down because my social life suffered, my romantic life suffered, my spiritual health suffered. And I ended up coming to a place where I needed to look myself in the mirror and say, okay, like what's at the root of this? Like, is it just about your physical health or is there something deeper? And that inspired another level of my own healing and my own recovery to go back into some more of my childhood and look at like where that stuff was coming from. And I've learned that now, like I went and I had some pizza the other night, and the old me I would have either beat myself up about it for days, or I would have gone and just eaten more because I'm like, oh, I'm going to self-sabotage. I might as well, if I'm eating pizza, I might as well go to the ice cream, might as well do this. But I was able to just have pizza and then just wake up the next day and feel okay with myself. And it was something that I just happened to think about because I was like, man, like a couple of years ago, I would have really been hard on myself. But now it's like, like every once in a while, it's okay. Like moderation is super important and very healthy. I want to go into mom guilt because I saw you make a post about it. And I can imagine that your perfectionism like amplifies the mom guilt. So if you could really, I guess I've heard it explained a little bit from people, but I don't really understand it. Obviously, because I'm not a parent, I'm not a mom. If you could maybe talk about like what mom guilt is, and then how you deal with it.
So I feel like moms have this innate feeling that's just kind of put there, that the nurturing feeling of needing to take care of your baby. And you feel it in pregnancy a lot. You feel it in birth. You feel it in everything, where you feel like all of a sudden your purpose as a human being is a mom to take care of my baby. And that doesn't necessarily have to come from pregnancy or birth. Like it can come from adoption or whatever. But that nurturing aspect. And the mom guilt comes from, my purpose is to protect this child in those little moments where you make the wrong decision, you use the wrong car seat, you might feed them the wrong food, they might fall and bump their head. You feel like you have failed at the most important job you've ever been given. And I don't think it's felt as much from like a father side, just because I think women have this feeling, this innate feeling. And I'm not saying like dad guilt isn't a thing, but I just think moms have a harder time. And I also think it's because society paints this picture of moms to be superhuman. If you think of every commercial you've ever watched when it comes to a mom, they're multitasking, they're juggling the kids, they're driving in the car, they're feeding them snacks. They're literally always painted as superhuman. And so we put this pressure on ourselves as mom to actually be that, when that is not possible. And so, yeah, I posted something the other day. Yesterday, I was just exhausted, and my little 2-year-old was just like, mama, 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 and not stopping. And all I wanted was to drink coffee. And I snapped at her. I was like, Drew, stop. Like, stop. And I mean, it's so little. That is such a little thing, right? In the grand scheme of things. But I felt like the scum of the earth because I'm a 30-year-old woman who snapped at a 2-year-old child who just wanted some mom time. And the mom guilt is I should know better and I should be better for my child. And it's just a thing. I don't know. And it just eats me alive. But mom guilt is hard to deal with. And perfectionism makes me want to be the perfect mom for her, and I expect to be. But I'm learning as I go that it's not possible.
You're right. And I think it's important to kind of share that because we all, I think in the society, you're right. I think you're taught, and I've seen this with moms, that you're just supposed to, be the nurturer, be the person who's always like doing different things around the house and taking care of the kids. And like, I think a lot of times what happens is there's no room to take care of yourself and put your own oxygen mask on and breathe and take care of your health and wellness, take care of your mental health, take care of your other relationships and that sort of thing. But I also think like I was always the guy that would tell my mom clients, like, you got to take care of yourself, put yourself first. And I do believe that's true, but I've also learned through the years that sometimes it's not that easy, right? Because life happens.
It's very, very hard. As a mom, there's just not a lot of time to take care of yourself. I think it's a really hard thing for a mom to do because that means you have to sacrifice some time with your kids and some time of taking care of your kids. But I do think the more you can take care of yourself, the more you can take care of your relationship or your marriage or whatever, the better parents you can be. So I believe in it. I just am also one of those moms where it's like, where is the time?
Right. Absolutely. And you have a lot of people that follow both you and your husband and that are enamored with what you guys have been able to accomplish. They love your podcast. They love your content. They've even like feel like they're part of your family now with your kids. And there's people that watch this and they almost like they want that lifestyle. They want to have the family. They want to showcase what they do on social media. They want the podcast that goes along with it. But people, I guess, might not realize it's not that simple and everything isn't sunshines and rainbows. So let's just say that you had a fan that ran into you at a coffee shop and you had like 30 seconds with them and they came up to you and they were like, I want to do what you guys are doing. Like, what kind of advice would you give to them?
I would say always keep your priorities in order, which is your family has to always come first. I feel like with the social media world, as soon as you put the content above what the reality is, it's fake and it jeopardizes the health of your well-being and your family. And Andrew and I truly love our family and we truly love what we do. But at the end of the day, we could care less if social media stopped tomorrow because our family is really strong. And we just like to show little glimpses of it. Whereas our family doesn't run from social media, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, the beat goes on, right? And life goes on. You still have to, like you said, prioritize your family and make sure that like whatever is going on inside the house is most important. And then social media, whatever happens on social media and whatever you post alongside that is kind of a bonus, right? And it's not the other way around where the validation of how successful you are as a parent, as a wife, as a mom, as a person is coming from social media. It's coming like from the inside first and then as a reflection of the outer world. One of the things that I think is incredibly inspiring about you is your ability to continue to reinvent yourself, to continue to pursue new things, right? Between what you did as a gymnast and then Dancing with the Stars and then other stuff you've done on television and then with the podcast and what you're doing now and the health, like the influencer space, so to speak, and how you are as a mom and a wife. Like, what's next for you? Do you see yourself like in this place for a while? Do you see yourself doing something else? Like, what's next for you?
I would give a lot of that credit to my husband because he is the one that taught me from day one that it's okay to fail miserably at something other than gymnastics, and you have to fail in order to learn. So I failed a million times before I succeeded in any of those things. But my husband and I have a goal for what's next. what we have learned from social media is what I spoke about with the miscarriage, that there's a community out there that's desperate for relatable people and families and family friendly content where you can connect across the world. And my husband has actually created a platform for that we are working on, that we can connect families and actually hopefully serve up the world some good content that's not trashy or clickbait, or that's appropriate for kids and families, I guess. So he's doing a genius job with it, and we're hopefully going to launch that soon.
That's awesome. Paying it forward, right? Turning a lot of the pain into purpose. I love it.
Trying to.
I've really enjoyed chatting with you and how open you've been with sharing all the things on the podcast. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get a lot out of this because we dove into so many different things. And I guess there's people who are listening to this that are already fans of yours, but for those who aren't and don't follow you, like, where's the best place to connect with both you and your husband?
You can follow us on YouTube as the East Family, or on any platform under Shawn Johnson or Andrew East. So
awesome. Well, I'll make sure to include the links to your website and to the social platforms in the show notes. And for those listening, what I invite you to do is to share a takeaway. Maybe it was something that Shawn said about her mental health. Maybe it's something that she said about her relationship with Andrew. Maybe it's something that she said about parenting, or her journey from the Olympics to where she is today, or her goals, whatever it was. Tag Shawn and tag myself, because we'd love to hear your feedback. And we once again thank you for listening to this episode of The Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopst, and we'll see you next time.